Alright, so we have a hard rubber disc and still battling with the gun smoke. Trying to get the texture, obviously there's no real texture, but you know what I mean. And the levels of shading and the shape. It is like clouds, but it's not like clouds. And it mustn't disappear into the sky. And so it is really quite a challenge. So I've put in dark polished areas. And this is a very, very, very smooth burr, which just takes the bloom off the very dark polisher, makes it even clearer. There's hardly any abrasive in this rubber at all. It's just very, very smooth. And I just touched up a little bit in those dark areas. I am, as you have realized by now, still experimenting. So here I've got a rat's tail and I've given up on the gun smoke for the moment. And I'm about to go into the masts. Obviously we've gone over the middle area with all these masts and flags and things like that, because the sky needed to be continuous, and I changed it so much, but obviously I could still see the details. But now it is time to go over them again and bring them to the foreground. There's a lot going on, but also a lot that I cannot really see clearly. It's just so difficult. You can't make things up. You've got to try and keep to the basic shapes that you can see. And as I said in the previous video, I am making this vessel light. And in actual fact, because I've seen another photograph of it, I think I showed it in the beginning, where the vessel is not in so much of a silhouette, and it is quite a light grey vessel. But the main thing is to get it to be recognizable, and the other main thing was to get the guns and the smoke. That was the request by the client. So I'm just redoing the guns. There are 2 sets visible. And as I said before, I'm not even sure if they're firing at the same time or whether that's possible. I really have no idea about these things, but it was just the shape of the smoke looked as though they had. It must have been an absolutely terrifying time. If you try and imagine the noise and the smells and the fear. So here I'm still studying what I can see of the picture and just adding a little bit of contrast, suggesting other things that are on the top of the ship. Obviously, these tiny little lines on the side, they will be bigger than they are in real life, but they needed to be there. And we will be making the flag quite a lot clearer just now as well. It's ever so small. When you think of the size of the actual ship, and we're putting into all of 6 centimeters wide or something like that. Still much to do. I think if you were to look at me, I'd probably had steam coming out my my head, with my brain working overtime trying to work out what on earth to do. For some reason I'm back with the black rubber, changing the shape slightly on the edges. And softening some more bits in the middle. At the same time, as you have seen before, it does make its own little hue, a very, very soft tone. And as per usual, because I'm looking at the Adobe Premiere Pro 2020 program, that's the name of the program I'm using, my image is not a full screen, obviously, because I've got all the technical bits going all the way around, so I can't see all that clearly. It's quite small. You can see how I have added some more variety into the smoke. It definitely does stand out from the background. It doesn't look too bad at this stage, but I know that I'm not happy with the sky at the moment. I'm wanting to make it more cloudified. Clouds which you absolutely cannot see in this picture. You know, the sky is completely blown out and light. You know, obviously there's no ways I can make it exactly like that. I needed the vessel to be a solid thing, not a transparent thing, because to make it that dark, as you know, it would have to be transparent. I didn't want that. So we will be adding more contrast to the vessel anyway, because you can see there's lots of bits and bobs going on along the top. So I'm really having a good old think about this. And at this point I've decided to sign it. Talk about procrastination. Contemplation. Oh, dearie me. Signed and dated. I have got a wonderful photograph of this gentleman, which I will add to the end of this video. I'm showing you as though I think it's finished, but of course it's not. We're only halfway through the video. Clearly, I've got something else up my sleeve. Now, along comes this really, really, really dilapidated, tatty, broken glass. Oh dear. I don't think we've ever used a glass so well before. And what have I got? I have got a disc that has got like a sandpaper. Well, it is a sandpaper disc. And it is pretty rough. And it's a new one. And so as you hold it against the glass, it will bend and it will make this wonderful blurry hue. And why I didn't use it much earlier on, I don't really know. And so I'm just doing some more kind of blobby, cloudy bits. And I will work on them. And here I go over my masts yet again. But it's got to be done because I mean, it may not make that much difference to the masts because they've gone a little bit deep, and this is really only on the surface. But it has to be continuous. You can't have any stops and starts. So it's also making the sky a little bit lighter so that the smoke will be that little bit darker. Of course, I don't want to make it too light, otherwise the vessel will disappear. Don't want that either, but we will be putting more contrast in that. It's quite a good little thing, this. You don't want to go, you don't want to spend too much time in one place, obviously. Well, you don't really with any burr because it gets very hot. But it is giving a really nice soft blendy kind of effect. I think if I had another hand, I'd probably give myself a pat on the back because I'm realizing this is a much better technique for what I want. They don't last all that long, obviously, because you're bending it. Every time you use it, it's getting warm. You've got to be very careful not to go over the edges. So interestingly, with this glass, in these 3 videos, we have done 2 new techniques which I haven't covered before, and the one being the hydrofluoric acid paste, and of course using this little sandpaper disc. Here I've got my white Arkansas because now I'm thinking, I can do all sorts of things to this smoke and still blend it out, so it has the variety of shades, and then we'll polish it. But there are very stark contrasts of light and dark in the smoke. But it's really tricky not to make it look too dotty like a tree. It's really tricky. You always have to experiment. Just experiment. And of course on a scrappy bit of glass, as you've seen me doing all throughout this engraving, because your burrs change. They change shape, they change size, they change in their abrasiveness. A lot of these you can just run them against a stone and then they will change again. If there's a little bit of grit consistency and you want to get rid of that, run it against a stone, and quite often you'll get back to a smoother stone. Usually the white Arkansas is pretty consistent though. It is a very soft stone. Right, for the big rubber, which is pretty abrasive, and as you know, also leaves the hue. I hope you've got a cup of tea and a bag of popcorn or something, or a scone, because this, I must admit, for such a small glass, this has been the longest video. But as I say, I wanted to show you all my experimenting this time. So here we've got the sandpaper disc yet again, and this time blending what I have put into the smoke. Still keeping it different to the sky. Right, I'm going to read you something from my client when she sent me the photograph of the gentleman, because I had asked when I do publish it, which she would really like me to do, I wanted to know what to write on there and what to call him, and so she wrote, "Glad that you could speak to Richard the other day. He says he doesn't really have any letters after his name except Legion d'Honneur, which was given to Normandy veterans on the 70th anniversary of D-Day. This was who he was on D-Day. Richard Llewellyn, midshipman, Royal Navy. On D-Day, aged 18, he was on the bridge of the HMS Ajax as a midshipman and navigating assistant." She goes on to say, "I have put your picture of the glass alongside the Ajax photo on my Facebook page, and it has been very much admired. I have attached a picture of Richard with his glass full of scotch in his hand. I hope you can use it if you want to. Thanks again, Ellie." Isn't that lovely? Right, so yeah, I have to say he was an absolute delight to chat to, because they phoned so that I could speak to him when he was given his glass. It was just lovely. So here I have got, you might be wondering by now, this is it's called the Little Darling. It is a burr that is like a mini wheel, if you like. And there is diamond coating on all the edges of this little wheel. And you've got to be very, very careful. It does cut pretty deep. And what I wanted to do was make sure that the line across the top of the vessel was very distinct. And it is going into the glass a bit. Now, you may see the line broke there. That is because the top level of the ship sort of dropped down a level, the edges. I could definitely see that in the picture. It's not very clear, but it is there. It's not one straight line going all the way across. This little burr is very good if you are carving away the background on, for example, a color overlay where you are carving away color, or even if you are just relief engraving, not necessarily cameo engraving with different colors. If you are relief engraving, carving away the background and leaving your details in relief, this is a good little burr to get on the edges, because you can chop straight down and create a vertical little edge. Right, here I have a normal round diamond burr, and I am just going to be filling in some brighter areas, just bringing them up a little bit. I just want the vessel to stand out. Yeah, as you can imagine, all I see are little blobs of colour. And when I very first traced it on, I made some marks so that I could see where those little blobs are. Just to get them in place. There's quite a large light area of bodywork holding the guns. So now they are standing out nicely. What to do next? If I can remember, larger. Oh no. Okay. My big white Arkansas. What I'm wanting to do here is soften some of the water, and I'm trying to be very careful because obviously I don't want to. Am I on the water? Yeah, I think I am. It doesn't look like it, but obviously the shape of the burr, it looks like I'm on the vessel, but I'm actually on the water, and I'm kind of blending it in a little bit because it was a little bit too sparkly. Trying to soften it down a bit. You may not have one of these large white Arkansas, as you know. If only I could get these again. I don't know where from. Can't find them. But you could use a smaller white Arkansas. Just be gentle with it. You get the thinner ones, and if you shape it sort of roughly into this shape so that you can use it more on its side, then you get more area coverage. That'll be alright. And a larger diamond. Now this larger diamond I'm going to fill in the body of the vessel again so it can really stand out. So here I have got a rather odd shape brown stone. It's a funny old stone, and I'm using it really, really lightly. As you can see, I've demonstrated. I'm holding it near the back end, and it's going very slowly, and I just want a few dots floating around here. As I mentioned earlier, there are definitely quite vivid contrasts of shading in the smoke. So just a few little dots around. I was going to say dotted around. Seriously? A few little dots dotted around the smoke. It's really a strange shape. Can't quite get my head around the shape of the smoke. So it's so annoying where you see a photograph, but trying to replicate it exactly, the texture and the shade, just being so difficult on this glass. It is definitely more like the photograph, the smoke. And of course, back to our trusty little bit of sandpaper. So we can just blend those little dotty bits in so they're not quite so stark. Are we getting there, I think? Back into my little trusty tray of burrs. As you know, that particular tray is, I've just got the burrs mainly that I'm using at the moment. On here I've got a really large stone. Same sort of stone as the little one we've just used, and I've decided I'm going to use that to highlight the edges. The edges of the bulges. I'm really not pressing hard. I'm holding on its side, and it's barely ticking over, and it's bouncing along the glass. And I'm going to do the same on the water, just to add a few slight sparkles in the water. It's kind of a stippled effect. You can do this with any burr, but a larger one is more effective because it's heavier and it's just going to bounce and tap the glass. Now I think just about the last thing I need to do is define this flag. It has a distinct 4 areas. It's got the cross in the middle, but it's got one square that is dark, and that needs to show up so that it is recognizable. So I have got a little white Arkansas, and I am just smoothing out the one corner. Little brown rubber to polish that back so that it is dark. And here I have got a little rat's tail, which I will enhance the other 3 areas that need to be white so that the cross stands out more. And a last touch again to the masts. And a few little details on the ship. There is another thing we could have done, which I thought about, and then I didn't. I don't think I did, actually, come to think of it. And that's to give it some sort of vignette, a sort of a softer edge. Crumbs, you know, I can't remember if I did or not. Instead of a more starker edge to the whole rectangular image. It really doesn't matter, but you can do, you know, even if you took the soft grey rubber in your hand and softened the edges to give it that vignette. A couple of little definite sparkly bits in the water, which is the effect of the ship, obviously, and its movement. And that is it. And I hope you really enjoyed that. It was very, very special for me. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.